So what I'm going to do here is just a screen recording of opening an image, calibrating it, doing the Weka segmentation and analysing the particles. It's probably going to be incredibly cringeworthy because I've never done a commentary Fiji video before. So let's see how it goes, and feel free to laugh when I inevitably crash my computer or start swearing halfway through. So I'm going to open the glass image here. Just by dragging the JPEG onto Fiji, and basically you can drag and drop pretty much any microscope file, so a TIFF, a raw file from a microscope, and if it's not a normal thing like a JPEG or a TIFF or a PNG, if it's for example from a Nikon microscope, Fiji's got this built-in thing called Bioformats Importer, and what the importer does is it's tools made to read these specific microscopy files. So the first thing I'm going to do with this image is crop out the scale bar, because we don't really want to classify that. So before I do that, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to use it to calibrate the image. So the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to select my image, and then using the plus key, so plus and minus, zoom in and out respectively, I'm going to zoom in, and I'm going to select the rectangle tool and just draw a rectangle. And I'm still holding on to the mouse at this point. And what you can see in the Fiji bar, where it says Fiji's just image day, it tells you the width and height and position of the rectangle that I've drawn. So we've got a height of 84 here. So that means that 100 microns is about 84 pixels. And we can actually tell the image that by going to Analyze, Tools, I think, is it? See, this is where it's embarrassing. Oh no, here we go. Set scale, I believe. There we are. So our distance in pixel was 84 pixels. That was the height of that scale bar. And the known distance is 1 micron. So I'm just going to, 100 microns. The pixel rate, they're square pixels, so we do it like that. And I'm just going to put in micrometers as our scale. So now you can see that up here it's converted it into, here we've got a number of pixels in the image, and here we've got the actual size of the image. So now I'm going to crop the image, and I'm just going to crop it to kind of the bit that we might, for example, want to look at. So again, just by clicking and dragging with the rectangle tool selected, I'm just going to select this part of the image here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to crop it, and you can either crop it by going to Image, Crop, or you can use the shortcut, which is Command-Shift-X, or on a Windows computer, Control-Shift-X. And bear in mind, if you crop it and then you save changes, you can't revert that. So if you want to be safe, it's always worth duplicating your original image and then cropping that. So here's our image that we've cropped, and now we want to start segmenting it. So I'm going to go to set my image again, and I'm going to say Plugins, Segmentation, Trainable Weka Segmentation. And our Fiji log here is just going to kind of keep us updated as to what's happening. And here we can see our image. Again, if you click on the image itself, you can use the plus and minus keys to zoom in and out, so you can get a bit more detail in your image. And what we're going to do now is I'm just going to try and quickly classify the orange and blue nuclei from each other. So you can see here you've got to have at least 2 classes. Here, class 1, actually what we can do to make it even better is we can change the class names. So I'm going to call class 1 blue nuclei and class 2 brown nuclei. And again, this is just my kind of very basic understanding of the staining here. Okay, and you can see that's updated the labels so we can keep track of what we're looking at a bit better. And we also want to add a background. So, not background, background. There you go. Okay, so now I've got my 3 classes. Slightly annoyingly, when you load up Weka, what you get to begin with is it automatically goes onto like the freehand scribble tool. That's kind of irritating. So what you can do is you can select any of these shapes and draw them round what we want to draw around. So, for example, let's start with some ovals. I'm going to do the blue nuclei. So I'm going to say, for example, this is a blue nucleus. So I'm just clicking and dragging. And then when I press add to blue nuclei, you can see it masks it out. So I'm going to go for this guy as well. Some smaller ones. And basically what we want to do is get a bit of a range going. So not just the prettiest ones, but the ones that you would, for example, if you're doing this visually, want to count as a nucleus. So for example, I'm going to go to the freehand selection tool. And I'm going to draw just a little wiggle around this guy here. You don't have to be too accurate, because we can always edit this later. So I'm just going to start with those 4 nuclei as blue. Staying with my freehand selection tool, which is that kind of kidney bean shape, I'm going to move on to the brown nuclei. So again, just tracing around the nucleus. Again, you don't need to be too accurate. It's kind of impossible to be particularly accurate with this. And as we know, we can refine it. Let's do one here. Add brown nuclei. I'm just going to click on the image, zoom out. I'm going to zoom into a different part of the image to make sure we're not being too biased. So it's also useful to, for example, capture different parts of your image to give a bit of variety for the classifiers. I'm going to go back to oval and say this guy here. And you can, of course, on these handles here, you can adjust it before you add it. Add the brown nuclei. And am I going to do one more? No, I'm going to leave that for the time being. So I'm going to zoom out. And finally, I'm just going to classify some background. And this is kind of absolutely fine to do freehand. So you might say, so for example, you might want to include these bits of cell body that have stained. So I'm just going to drag there. That's an example of background. That's an example of background. That's an example of background. That's background. Okay. So we've got our kind of first iteration of manual classification. And now we're actually going to start training our classifier. So obviously you press plain classifier. And it takes a little time, but what we see up here is this progress bar, updating features. It'll say a lot of kind of confusing things that don't really mean anything. And you'll also see messages come up in the log. I don't know what the image science library is or why it's unavailable, but you know, I've never had any problems with that happening, so I think that happens every time and I've always been able to segment fine. So this is going to be the awkward bit of the video where I kind of ramble aimlessly while it's classifying. Again, we've got more information about what we've had as input, and here we can see our image that we've trained up. So it's done an okay initial job, but as we saw when we did this previously, it's kind of joined lots of nuclei together. So what we're going to do now is we're going to refine this. And the way I'm going to refine this is, for example, by drawing some background. So I'm going to go for this freehand line. And what I'm going to do, so for example, you can see there are 2 red nuclei here that are joined together. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to say that bit there, that should actually all be background. We've also got, for example, between those nuclei, and if you do go wrong, like I've done here, you just click somewhere else and that disappears. So let's go again. There we are. That's background. And of course, you can also go for a straight line. So this is set to freehand line at the moment. If you right click, you can also have a straight line. So for example, there we go, draw a straight line there, add the background. Okay. So I'm just going to draw a couple more and see how it does. Where are we? So I'm going to go back to freehand. And I'm just going to say, and so if you're on the freehand line rather than the freehand selection, what you can actually do is draw a little ring around there. And it won't say, it'll only say the bit along the line is in the classifier, not the area within. So if you press add to background, what you see is just that line has gone purple as opposed to the what's inside. So we haven't misclassified our nucleus as background. Okay, so let's zoom out. And you can also do this reclassification without the overlay. So you can take it off and you can still draw classifiers. So for example, because it's difficult to see the colours of your nuclei. You might say, okay, well, fine, I'm going to add a brown nucleus there because I can't tell what colour it is with the overlay on. Zoom out again by pressing minus, and then I'm going to update the classifier by pressing train classifier again. So again, you get kind of interesting little messages coming up here, which sound very impressive, but I don't really know what they mean. And you can see now it's doing a bit of a better job. So click the image and zoom in now. What we're seeing is we're beginning to get separate nuclei in this green region. I'm going to just do one more bit of training. I'm going to, so what's really good is if you've got the overlay on, that's really good for kind of trying to subtract bits that the classifier's got wrong. So for example, the bits between nuclei. So again, if we go back to a straight line and draw it and apply classifier. Oh, no, don't do that. Do not apply classifier, add to background. That was completely the wrong thing to do. I didn't press it, so we're fine. And then what I'm going to do is untoggle the overlay. And I noticed that in this part of the image here, something fishy is going on. So what I'm going to do is actually retrain a bit over here as well. So I might use polygon just to mix it up. And for the polygon selection, you basically just click the corners where you want to go. Click, click, click. And back to the first pixel, which should be boxed. And then add brown nuclei. And do this one as well. See if it improves it, it might not. Sometimes more classification actually makes it worse. So what you might want to do is, if you've got a good classifier that you're kind of baseline happy with, is actually save that classifier before making more changes. So you can have like a version 1 classifier, and then if you fiddle too much with it and it all goes wrong, you can just revert back to whichever model that you kind of created earlier. So I'm just going to do this guy here as well. Okay. And so one more time for good measure, let's put the overlay on, plain classifier. And again, see the progress bar coming along. And when that gets to the top, we've redone it. Okay. So it's not perfect, obviously, but it'll do for the time being. So how do we go away? I'm just going to click on the rectangle here so I haven't got a random line going across the image. There we go. Okay, so I'm pretty happy with this image. You know, obviously you can train more or less or whatever you want to do. What I want to do now is firstly save my model. So save the classifier that I've created so that if I'm going to open another image, I can just directly apply this classifier to it, which we want to do if we're comparing different images and we want to see that there are similar features in each one. I also want to extract the different classes as their probability maps so that we can then analyse how the particles are looking, or in this case, how the nuclei are looking. Okay, so firstly, let's save this classifier. So save classifier. I'm in the Rihanna folder, and this is just going to be demo video.model. Save. Okay, so that's saved, and we can open that again later. Now, what we can do now is we can generate result image, which will basically just give you your segmented image without the original image there as well. You can obviously save that if you want by going to File, Save As, and then TIFF's normally the best format. But what's really interesting for us is get probability. So if we generate the probability maps, classifying image, one last time, there we go. So what you'll see is we've got 3 different channels. So the first channel, blue nuclei, that's our blue nuclei. And we can move along by pressing the comma and full stop keys on the keyboard with the arrows above them. So the kind of greater than less than signs, or we can just use the mouse. So here are probability maps for the brown nuclei, and here's our background. And again, if you want to examine the kind of probabilities we've got, we can mouse over pixels in our probability map, and the values will come up in this bar here. So here it's absolutely positive. We've got background. Here it's kind of half and half as to whether that should actually be brown nucleus or not. And again, for example, here it's absolutely certain that's not any kind of nucleus. So what I'm going to do now is, as an example, I'm going to threshold out the blue nuclei based on the probability and count them and measure them. So to do that, what we're going to do is I'm actually going to duplicate the first. I'm going to take the first one out, a copy of this first image out, so we can play with that, so we don't ruin the whole probability map. So the way we do that is you can either go image, duplicate, or you can use a shortcut which is Control-Shift-D. And you can see here there's duplicate. So duplicate stack will duplicate all 3 images. We don't want that, we just want this blue image here. And again, if, for example, we were on brown nuclei, now I go to duplicate. If I press duplicate now, it would duplicate just the brown nuclei because this isn't checked. Okay, so let's go back to blue nuclei, Control-Shift-D, and I'm just going to duplicate that. So there we go, there's a copy of our probability map for our blue nuclei. Next thing we want to do is threshold this image. So we basically want to say anything below a certain probability is not a nucleus and we don't want to measure that. So the way we do that is, I only know these shortcuts, so I need to kind of remember how to get there. Our image, threshold, apply threshold. That's almost certainly not how you do it because I don't really get that message. Another thing you can do in Fiji is if you press Control-L, you can actually search for a command, which is really great when, if you're like me, you can never remember how to do your thresholding. So there's lots of options here. So threshold, this one here. And it also tells you where to find it, which is image adjust. Okay, so I'm going to open that, close that. And so what we see here, what in red is what's going to be kept in the image. And so what this histogram is the amount of image that you're on the red side, that's how much you're keeping. And on the not red side, that's how much you're getting rid of. So at the moment we're getting rid of most of our, we're keeping 16.5% of our image. We're getting rid of, keeping, oh dear, I've got in a muddle here. Let's start that again. So here we're keeping 16.57% of the pixels, so those are the ones that are shaded red, and we're getting rid of all of these ones. So we've got dark background text because that's our baseline. So what we can do is we can actually, as we move this, we see we get less and less red, which corresponds to that percentage there. So I reckon somewhere around, and to be honest, it's just a very visual thing. You can be consistent, for example, with a 10% threshold. I need to check whether this actually directly corresponds to the probability. It might not do. But if we want to threshold exactly by probability, then we can also do that. That's not a problem. But it's kind of good just to use the threshold tool. So I'm going to threshold out these nuclei, maybe so 10%, the top 10% of intensity in this image we're going to keep. So I'm going to press apply. Set background pixels to nan, and nan is not a number, it's no one's grandmother, it's just not a number. So it's not 0, it's not infinity, it's just not a number. Okay, and to the untrained eye, this has done absolutely nothing. However, if we then go to process, binary, make binary, what you can see is it's actually kind of retained the information from that thresholding, and you can then convert it into this binary image where our background has our not nuclei is 0 and our nuclei are 255, so the maximum value of an 8-bit image, which is basically 1. I'm going to exit threshold, and now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to measure these particles. So I'm going to go to analyze particles. And so here we have our analyze particles dialog box, and because I calibrated the scale earlier, what we've got is you can actually define a size range in microns squared, which is actually quite useful. Or if we're kind of not really sure how big these actually are, we can choose pixel units. So for example, let's say that I don't mind how big my biggest nucleus is, so I'm going to keep that as infinity, but I'm going to say that anything less than 4 square pixels is going to be kind of disregarded. It's too small, it's probably noise. So because I've got pixel units ticked, that's 4 pixels, 4 square pixels to infinity square pixels. That's the range we're going to be looking for nuclei in. I'm going to untick display results. I'm going to keep summarize. And what we're going to do now is we just press OK. There we go. So what we've got here is our count, which is the total number of nuclei it's counted, the total area covered by the nuclei, the average size of each nucleus, which I believe should be in microns squared, the complete percentage of our area covered by nuclei, and the mean value, which here is going to be 255 because we've already thresholded that image. So there we have our analysed particles, and you can always save this as an Excel file if you want to. So summary of blue nuclei, for example. Okay, so the last thing we might want to do is actually apply the classifier that we made to another image. I'm just going to run through this quickly. I'm not going to go through the calibration or anything else for the next image. It's just going to be loading the classifier and applying it. So I'm going to close Weka, that's got our old data in it. And I'm going to open the steel image now. And again, I'm just going to crop out a region so we don't have the scale bar. And again, I'm going to crop using Control-Shift-X. Okay. Then again, we go to plugins, segmentation, Trainable Weka segmentation. Okay. So again, we can use our plus and minus to zoom in and out. And what we want to do is we want to load the classifier, which we called demo video.model. Open. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're actually going to press create result. And create result will basically, again, apply the rules that we defined in our previous classifier to this image and segment it accordingly. So it's kind of going along, chugging along. Hopefully it'll be done soon, so I don't have to kind of waffle on for much longer. Oh, it's nearly there. Classifying image, and there we go. So there's our classified image in this case. It's a bit grim, but we can again then toggle the overlay and see how it's done. And again, you've got blue nuclei, brown nuclei in background.